In the world before, equality for all human beings was never achieved. Whoever had the most power ruled the next man and benefited from their work, as did he from another. The chain of powers separated people and created a schism between happiness and survival.
In the early decades of the 21st century, government and police abused power against those of lower class and race. Leading up to 2015 and within the year, cases of police brutality against minorities, most specifically African Americans, rose to the spotlight in international media.
In Ferguson, 18-year-old Michael Brown was shot and killed by a white police officer, an event that may have never happened if the men had been of the same race. Eric Garner was choked to death while saying, "I can't breathe." The fight that had started the death may have never been serious if Garner had been white. Had true equality been established and prejudices and stereotypes been non-existent, these events would have never occurred. This is something we can't let happen in our new world.
Racism in what was the U.S. was something that was deeply rooted in the introduction to slavery. Native Son is a novel that depicts the detrimental oppression in the aftermath of the abolition. In our new world, slavery and the exploitation of humans will not be allowed.
Native Son also showed the failure of our government to achieve equality for all. This is bound to happen in a democracy because it gives power to the majority, and whoever is in the minority is unheard. In Native Son, people like Mr. Dolan would be heard in politics, but Bigger and many like him suffered in terrible conditions but couldn't do anything about it because his race and class was unheard due to being part of the minority.
Entropy is a scientific concept that explains how systems naturally move towards chaos. In a democracy, things will move to chaos because as government adjusts to the majority, the minority is hit hard. Raised taxes cause less incentive to produce, and when there's no one to produce, democracy will collapse. And thus it turns into a dictatorship. Although all of this is true, there must be structure, as shown in Animal Farm. Without structure, dictators are created just the same. Individuals are limited on how much power they can control without abusing it, and equity for all opens the floor for someone to take over. In the novel, the character Napoleon represented this power-hungry figure.
James Madison wrote once, "Democracies have been the spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and have in general been as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths." In fact, in elementary school, we were all taught the Pledge of Allegiance, which states America's true intention to be a republic. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and for the republic for which it stands.
We plan to create a republic for the future, a place where everyone is represented and heard equally through a better election system. People will therefore be more equal, also fighting the battle of racism. If minorities escape from previous confinements of the previous world, then their opportunities are greater, and thus they can break through the stereotypes and generalizations that lead to racism. While equality for all is important, it is just as important for people to be represented by their leaders.
After establishing a world that we can govern and live in, it is very important to start working towards raising the next generation to progress mankind as a species. It all starts with the education system.
In many ways, the old education system failed to adhere to hyperactive youths who were overdiagnosed and just needed a different learning environment. Instead of tailoring to the different ways of learning, schools and parents buy into the idea that something is wrong with the children and take the easy route and beat around the bush by aimlessly giving young children powerful medication. I was diagnosed with ADHD in 3rd grade, and against the doctor's suggestion, my father refused to allow me to take these drugs that were still being researched on. Instead, I was brought out of class and taught learning skills to stay on task. Perhaps some need this medication, but to prescribe a child at such an early age and on such a large scale shows impulsiveness, and that perhaps we need to accept that our generations are growing up differently, and instead of trying to adapt them to the former norms, the best thing to do is to adapt to the future and the new.
In addition to the lower schools, the cookie-cutter college mindset that is created in high school boxes kids into a stigma where college is the only way to succeed. Kids spend too much time worrying about getting into school rather than building upon their lives and figuring out what they really want to do with their future. Anything is possible, but not enough people realize it. It seems like before that people lost their individuality and a sense of themselves. In a world with too much nurture and not enough nature, people grow up without any confidence in themselves. There are too many influences that have too much impact on people, such as school, medication, and social situations. Without a sense of one's inner self, they will never be truly happy. We must learn to love ourselves to be happy, and for us all to be happy would create a utopia.
If people are able to make a living with something they love, then everyone wins. Imagine how many more teachers there would be if you could make an honest living off of it. The failure of this in the past is shown in the inner city education systems like Philadelphia, where teachers care just as much as the kids. The same goes for expression, creativity, and art, things that many would pursue if they believed it was possible. Instead, many are stuck living a life they hate because they are told it's just the way it is. It is assumed that the world is just the way it is, and you are to play a part in it. But once people realize they can change it and they can create their own reality of it, anything is possible.
Religion and politics have ruled the past worlds to success and failure, but they are a necessary part of life. Religion teaches right from wrong and gives people a sense of belief and faith, while government keeps people in a structure and system where we can succeed as a species. Both of these things are important, but the power within them must be reduced and instead spread towards individuality and the true pursuit of happiness. All problems start from within us, and if we have our morals, roles, and purpose, we can use them for the greater good of the world and progress into utopia.